Hey Terrence, hey Ariel.
Hey
Hey
guys,
Matthew, hey Terrence.
good morning, good morning, or good afternoon, Matthew.
Indeed. Give me 1 second as I'm just sort of settling into to the office.
No worries, no worries. Excited to be here with everybody. How are you, Ariel? Looking amazing per usual.
Thank you, thank you. Doing good, good. Very productive week. Can't complain.
Yeah, what's been
Yeah.
going on in your world?
Oh, a lot. I have to kind of keep a tight lip really quick.
Ooh,
So
okay,
yeah, we'll be
okay.
talking.
Yeah,
We'll be talking. There's some good stuff.
I
So
like those.
I gotta wait for the ink to dry for
Yes,
lack of better
yes,
word. There's
yes.
some good stuff coming.
Okay, all right. Well, we will hold our breaths, but
Okay.
I'm very excited for you. That sounds
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. Thank you. And Matthew, best of luck. It sounds like you're at the end of the third trimester.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We're down to the last 6 weeks. In fact, pardon me for my tardiness, as I was just getting back from the MFN, and it's anyway, it's good. So on a personal front, it's been a great week as well.
Yeah. Same, same. I've got two little ones as well, so I understand where you are right now.
Yeah. This is our second. The Our son is two and a half.
Yeah, same, same. My oldest is 2.5, and then my youngest is 8 months.
Oh, okay. Congratulations to you as
Thank you.
well.
Thank
Right?
you.
So, but you're in the same boat as I am. That it's been
Absolutely.
2 years of diapers, and we got another 2 years coming. And
Yeah,
yeah, fair enough.
it's just gonna be the norm.
It
That's
is. I can
okay.
tolerate it. Yeah, I can deal with it. Yeah, that's cool. No, congratulations.
Thank you.
I was not aware. Well, on both fronts, on the professional and the tight lip, but also the family side.
Yeah, no worries. I'm hoping to share more very, very soon. I'll get some guidelines on how I'll be able to share social media and all that other stuff, but
Terrific.
some good stuff coming.
That's great.
Goodness, back to school, huh?
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
indeed.
Summer's always an interesting time, in my opinion, for business. Well, particularly out here in the desert, where it just basically slows to a crawl. It's really hot. And then I think the other layer of that is that Joshua Tree is a winter park. And so a lot of the economy sort of flows through, Joshua Tree and, again, the summer just being so hot, it's just the low part of the season.
Mhm.
Um, and then you're competing, I think, with, vacations and all that sort of stuff. But I think when school kicks back around, everybody's like, okay, let's get back to
Let's
it.
go. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm here. Yeah, and fourth, and that not only that, but fourth quarter is right away,
exactly.
Yeah, that's enough on
Exactly.
us.
which is that much more shocking. The year has really sort of sailed, and for all the goods and the bads, it has moved. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, the headlines are always just like so interesting, and that has been for me at least, and we can dive into the meeting here in a bit, but it's just, checking out the current events and it's like what's happening today, and that then sort of dictates how to respond in so many different ways, it feels like, so I don't know if you all feel that.
hmm
Very much so.
I'm taking more time for self-care these days. Yes.
Yeah,
um,
Ariel, I don't know if you know. So I'm located Bethesda, right outside of DC, and so it's yeah, this stuff has been
It's right on your doorstep. Yeah, I
close
have
to home.
friends. My sister's in DC, so it's
okay.
right
Yeah,
on your doorstep. So you literally can't, well, from what I've heard, you can't really escape it because it's everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
So
So, but yeah. The point of self care of just being hitting home nicely. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a critical one.
Yes.
Um, so I'm going to be a little bit redundant in that, I'm just gonna, you guys, or you all, excuse me, have done, just you guys are, both of you are my favorites, like I really just, you both are very near and dear to my heart. I love our conversations. And, I'm really excited about today's conversation. I'm hoping that you all may be able to provide, just brief or broad overviews of who you are, what it is that you do, just to make formal introductions, and then we'll probably do that again for the actual conversation. Just, with that being said, I would love for maybe you take 30, 45 seconds to introduce yourself, what it is that you do, and, maybe what you're working on or whatever it is that you want to add, but just provide some context to one another.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can go first. So Ariel, I previously was in tech for over a decade, and I was an operator. I had different capacities, etc. Where I am now is I'm the founder of Infinitely Elevated. So I do RevOps career coaching as well as business operations consulting, and really just focusing on bringing everything that I learned during my time in tech and how to help people elevate their careers in revenue operations specifically, by focusing on the human side of RevOps, like the human that's doing the work, not just the work to be done. Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Ariel. And to be fair, I actually sat in on yours and Terrence's conversation
That's
earlier
right.
this year.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
man,
I
okay.
loved it. I loved it. I was like, oh my. And when the name dropped, I was like, oh my god, I get to chat with Ariel.
Okay.
How exciting! How exciting! Yeah, but just a quick bit about me. I'm in the background. I've been sort of in RevOps, commercial ops before that, and sort of as that RevOps sort of function evolved, like there some parameters were put around it. I was right in the middle of that commercial operation side as well, and I've been doing that for the past 15-ish years. Uh, Largely, as my career is elevated, et cetera, I've taken on sort of more responsibilities, but absolutely at the intersection of marketing, sales, customer success, and sort of that operational organization maestro bit within companies, and from the tech stack to the systems, the processes, et cetera. I've spent most recently a number of years within a SaaS-based legal consultancy, focused in environmental health and safety, of which I don't have a great background in, but it's the RevOps side that I was able to support that in pharmaceutical CRO space, similar function, landscape mapping type of stuff. And
Yeah.
before that, I was with Forbes for a number of years doing their international focus features. So taking a much more macro lens, but similar sort of themes that we see on a daily basis with RevOps. And most
Yeah.
recently, have launched sort of my own outfit, and working in conjunction with a company called Cogent Analytics at a consulting space. So working with a couple different sort of small, medium-sized companies, to implement some of those things that we talk about on a regular basis. But yeah, that's my background.
All right, cool. Nice to meet you. Well,
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And I think part of the goal, I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I certainly would love to be able to host like an in-person session, or, and again, it's sort of, and I think that's part of, my desire for the RevOps Masters community has come in the form of how do we go back to making social media more social in so many different ways. And, just as we're kicking off to today's recording, I'm just so mindful of LinkedIn, particularly with like the influx of AI content, almost feels like a little bit of a graveyard in so many different ways.
Oh, yeah.
And I think moments like this, like today's roundtable, where we bring community members together just to have a little bit of a deeper, connection, I think it matters more than ever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I can't wait to be able to meet you both in person and give you a big hug.
Three-dimensional type of thing. Yeah, yeah. Like, oh yeah, you are a full body person. Yeah, absolutely.
Totally, totally, totally. So, just getting things kicked off. Welcome everyone. If you are watching today's recording, we are meeting today as part of an expansion of our RevOps Masters community. Today, we are hosting a roundtable with two RevOps professionals and revenue operations professionals who are near and dear to my heart. They are also members of the RevOps Masters LinkedIn community, which is a value add from Atomic Revenue, one of your favorite, hopefully, revenue operations and sales enablement firms that works to provide medium to large size or enterprise organizations, I should say, with their revenue operations stack, as well as their sales enablement activities. And in the capacity of community manager for that group, my focus is on highlighting and sharing the really rich knowledge and information made possible by our community members, as well as to bring us together in the spirit of cooperation, collaboration, and perhaps as an opportunity to shine some light on current events. And so excited today to be joined by Ariel and Matthew, who again are two members of our community. And hopefully, I'm just going to go ahead and just hand things off to you to maybe provide some brief overviews and introductions for the record, and then we're going to go ahead and hop into today's topic, if that works.
Yeah.
Awesome. Please, ladies first, Ariel. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Terry. So happy to be here and finally get to kind of just chat about RevOps, all things RevOps. But my name is Arriel Balagoon. I am the founder of Infinitely Elevated, and I am the Revenue Operations Career Coach. I am truly excited to focus on the human side of revenue operations. So the human that's actually doing the work, not just the work to be done. And now I'll pass it over to Matthew to do his intro.
Thank you, Ariel. It's a pleasure to be seated here with you and Terrence. Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Matthew Dickert. I am the founder of Vistara Advisory. And in my career, I've had the opportunity to sit at sort of this intersection, really exciting intersection of sales, marketing, customer success, whether in SaaS or services or sort of traditional industries. And I've always found when these teams are misaligned, friction shows up in predictable ways, and it's a challenge. It's a necessary obligation to sort of resolve it. And so, my role over the past number of years, prior to Vistara Advisory, has been often to build that connective tissue, data, processes, sort of accountability mechanisms, et cetera. And it's to sort of transform those silos and into a system that it helps organizations grow. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be part of this. Ariel, thank you. Terrence, thank you. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm going to lean on you all for your expertise. You guys are both, in my opinion, subject matter experts. And even in your introductions, the two sort of keywords or phrases, or perhaps even concepts that stuck out to me, came in the form of Matthew. You alluded to friction, right? And then Ariel, you alluded to the human aspect of revenue operations, which, is very, serendipitous, I should say, for the topic at hand. Today's conversation is titled From Silos to Systems, Designing Revenue or RevOps for Cross-Team Accountability, right? And so when we consider, this concept of friction related to the way that teams across departments are working together. And then I think to Ariel's point, right, the human aspect of perhaps what are some of those underlying issues or concepts that relate to some of that friction are probably where we're going to be spending a little bit of our time today. So at a very high level, this conversation, in my opinion, comes in the form of that overlap between aligning revenue operations with people operations, and how the two sort of come together in the form of our go-to-market strategies, right? And what that certainly looks like. And so we're just going to go ahead and hop into some fun and exciting questions, which I've got here. And you all know how this works. I always like to have questions prepared for you. However, the natural and organic flow of the conversation, and based on just on how smart and insightful you are, I can throw little curveballs at you, which you typically knock out of the park. So, as a reminder, and this is for, everyone catching the replay, if you haven't actually caught individual episodes of Ariel and Matthew before, please, once you get done watching today's video, please revisit those conversations for some additional nuggets of information, and perhaps to see, excuse me, how perhaps some of their ideas have expanded based off of just the dynamic nature of revenue operations and sales enablement. So going ahead and getting things kicked off, and I'm going to call on you first, Matthew, and then, Ariel, I'll have you respond, and perhaps we'll just sort of ping pong based off of, how time allows. But so this first question is directly related to alignment and cross-functional strategy. And so my first question for you all comes in the form of how do you build and sustain alignment between revenue operations, people operations, and go-to-market teams?
It's a good question. Let me internalize this. I think part of the biggest thing that I've seen within sort of the RevOps function, so building that alignment is, starting with establishing trust across those sort of divisions. And from my perspective, trust is, driven data is sort of where my background is. So how do you build trust and confidence in that information? We're all looking at similar or hopefully the same information, but we might have different stories and we might have different pieces of ownership for that. And how do we manage that in such a way that gives us all confidence in the approach that we're taking to achieve sort of a business underlying goals. And for me, building that alignment, starts with establishing trust. Could be, from a process perspective, is everybody on the same tools? Are we doing weekly cadences to sort of introduce each other to the approaches we're taking, how we're interpreting data? Are we doing those types of show and tells where we're allowing each other to learn from the approaches to our objective, but the systems and tools that we're using? So I think that's sort of how I initially approached that alignment building, is a sort of establishing trust through those understandings of the tools that we're using, the processes we're taking, and the manner in which we are interrogating those data sets that we regularly use. Hopefully that sort of kicks us off.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I've got some initial thoughts here, but I'm going to go ahead and defer to Ariel because my assumption is that there's going to be a ton of overlap. So please, Ariel, same question.
Absolutely.
How do you build and sustain alignment between RevOps, people ops, and go-to-market teams?
Yeah, so yeah, to piggyback off of what Matthew said around trust, that is the key. Trust in your data, trust in your process, trust in your leadership, trust in your cross-functional team members, because at the end of the day, we all have this goal to get to together. And so we kind of have to learn to trust each other in that process in getting there. And so a second layer to that is communicating well. So is your data communicating well? Are your teams communicating well? Are your processes doing what it was supposed to? Do you need to improve your workflow? So just taking a moment to like establish the trust, overlay it with, how do we have improved communication? And then as far as people ops, like I I really feel for folks. I'm very used to transition and change and kind of having to move on the fly. That's kind of the nature of RevOps sometimes, but there are other teams that don't quite operate that way, or it's very or slow to respond or slow to change management when it comes to the things that need to be done to get to our goal. So honestly, I see RevOps and people ops, I see it as building a bridge between the two. Um, and because honestly, at the core of every system is people. So I really need to make sure that we're okay so that we can do the things to grow our revenue, to retain our customers and keep them happy. Um, yeah, so I'll kind of pause there, but yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Trust it.
yeah, well said, all. And what I heard in so many different ways comes in the form of trust. And I think the underlying aspect of trust comes in the form of the dynamic nature of such, in that, we all hear that. What is that saying about trust is like a vase, once it's broken, you can certainly, sort of glue it back together, but you see all the cracks that, once was, right? Which is not my favorite analogy. What I have learned in, all right, I'm aging myself or dating myself, I should say, but almost 40 years of life here has come in the form of trust is like a house. And
Mm,
you certainly might have a natural disaster come in, a hurricane come in, or an earthquake that perhaps like destabilizes a portion of the property, right? But with a focus on understanding what went wrong, certainly being able to assess and understand how to implement repair, right? You actually offer yourself the opportunity to improve the quality of the structure, right? But I think, hitting that pause button and being able to focus on that audit process, right? The system planning, and then ultimately being able to determine how do we reinforce concepts of trust, provides an opportunity to, move beyond the trauma of what was, right? And so, through this lens of our revenue operations, our people operations, our go-to-market strategy, so much of my thinking comes in the form of, certainly trust can be built, trust can be broken, but do we have trust within our teams, within our systems that should something be broken, it can be fixed, right? Um,
Yeah.
And how is it maintained over time? I think
Hmm.
that's a critical part of it. Do we have approaches? Do we have pathways that, certainly from the RevOps side and Ariel, I think there's a direct alignment here on the people ops side as well. But is there transparency? Is there consistency? Is it applicable? From my mind, and guys, from a data side, can we trust the data? Do our teammates, do our collaborators have confidence in what we're showing them? I mean, data can show and number can show any story you want to tell, but do they have faith in the information they're looking at? Is it consistent? Does it hold up across the different systems that we're using? I mean, I love my different CRM platforms, and right now I get to help different companies implement the appropriate platform for them, whether it's Zoho or Zoho's Bigin, or it's HubSpot or Salesforce, or it's one of the new like really elegant AI driven functionalities that's changing that landscape. But you also have this patchwork of other tools that people are integrating for their go to market motions, et cetera, and whether it's the sequencing, the campaign attributions, those types of things. But so can that data hold up across teams, and then can those teams and Ariel, I think you could probably clearly nail it home here. But can those teams communicate and have confidence? And if they don't, or if there are ways to critique it, are they able to do that in a sort of a meaningful manner? And I think all of that, if that exists, that's a big part of building that trust, maintaining that trust, and allowing that trust to continue to expand as the organizations and the systems change at light speed. That's sort of my thought, at least.
Yeah. A big thing too, around the people side of revenue operations in totality is being able to be that trusted source and being able to also have people come to you and say, I don't think this is right. Here's why. I
Mhm.
need to be able to do this, and the data is not showing me this. I can't find the report. Is there something that exists? Rather than always starting fresh and trying to create something new, see what is already in rotation, so that we can unblock ourselves to get there. I think another point, like in working with a lot of different teams, I understand truly that folks are really scared of failure. And I think that is the driving factor behind all of these things, behind the trust and the communication, is that they don't want to fail. And when we talk about, the topic of the day, silos, my marketing strategies can't fail. My sales processes can't fail. My post-sales processes can't fail, because then, you're at risk for other things, right? But to that point, like being open to hearing those problems. How can we come up with a better solution? Um, and then using that information to say, okay, is there someone else that's figuring this out in a different way? How can we bridge the gap and come together? So I start with failure, but then like, how do we work back? We do that a lot with like pre-mortems. And I'm saying,
Mhm.
if we could just say, what's the worst case scenario? Let's go there, and just kind of give them 5 minutes to run through all the worst case scenarios and say, okay, if we don't hit that worst case scenario, everything else we can actually deal with. We can resolve, we can create a solution, we can create alignment and get to the next level of what we're trying to do.
Ariel, you are getting ahead of the
Oh,
conversation,
sorry.
young lady, but that was so well said. And, I think just going back to this analogy of building, right? Where if we're building an office or building a structure, if you are the plumber or the electrician or you're responsible for the drywall, for example, certainly you need to be a subject matter expert in what it is that you do, but you also, in my opinion, must be aware of how your work impacts the other, right? And the fact of the matter is that your personal level of respect and reputation comes not only in the form of what it is that you do well, but having that deep level of empathy, of understanding of how doing a poor quality job ultimately impacts team dynamics, which, I think if we're then going back to the next question in our interview or in our roundtable, excuse me, and well, I'm just gonna encourage you to expand on the premortal. Is that the correct phrase that you use, Maria?
Pre-mortem. Yeah,
Premortal.
pre-mortem. So it's the opposite of a post-mortem or a retrospective.
Apologies. Yes.
Yeah, no worries. So I can elaborate a little bit more on that for sure. So um it is just a general thought process of how do we how do we try to think through all aspects of failure and what we're trying to accomplish. What could possibly go wrong? And then as we understand where our teams are identifying points of failure, how do we then start to work backwards to say, well, what could be a solution? What could be a remedy? What resources are at our disposal that we could tap into if we see ourselves going down this path of failure in this avenue or in this capacity, and then saying, okay, we kind of have a plan from there if we start heading into these very bumpy or failure driven approaches to our projects, initiatives, etc. So then I'll stop there because I want to give kind of a general understanding of a
Sure.
premortem, but we'll get to the other good stuff soon.
Yeah, yeah, and just completing the question came in the form of understanding the frameworks and or rituals that have worked to foster cross-functional accountability. And I do love that concept that Ariel is alluding to, the premortem in the form of, and if we think about that, right, the deep levels of empathy related to, overcoming our fear, how do we approach, this concept of alignment and cross-functional strategy through this lens of, well, you know what, these are all of the things that freak me out, right? These are the things that I'm concerned about that could absolutely go wrong. And I'm not looking to, just come through this lens of being totally confident and cocky in all aspects of, what it is that I do well. I want my team to have an understanding of the, critical levels of failure that I see, right? In order to understand, and this is a design thinking question that I love, is the concept of how might we, right? And being able to posit a problem or a problem statement with this concept of how might we solve for this problem and or solution. And so, Matthew, same question for you. What are some frameworks and or rituals, how might we is one of my favorite ones, right? How might we teaches, in my opinion, teams that there's a solution on the other side of the problem that we're facing and that we're not alone in solving for it. But what are some frameworks and or rituals that have worked for you in terms of fostering some of that cross-functional accountability amongst teams?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I don't think I can say it much better than Ariel here, but for sure, building out those routines, soft and hard, that allow my team, within RevOps or the cross collaborative work that we do with marketing, with sales, with IT, with finance, etc., to understand, but also be critical. And I think of critical in the sense that not being fearful of asking questions or interrogating what we're looking at. to that point, I mean, failure is not a bad thing. It is, how do we learn, et cetera. I love our capacity at IT. So I'm just looking at, I know there's the analogy, and I thought it was an Einstein quip, but about, there's no success without failure as part of that, progress. And I mean, to be able to easily call on some of the greatest minds in history and say, hey, failure is not a bad thing. But in those rituals, in the way that we engage them, I mean, not allowing your team or team members or your colleagues to will, I'm trying to think of the right word, but to challenge you, and to do it in such a way that they have confidence that, hey, they may not understand, or they may ask the question because it's a blind spot. It's a looking around the corner that you hadn't thought or predicted. And so to I guess to answer your question and directly, Terrence, yeah, some of those things that I have done and I try to bake in on a regular basis is those, not just the one-on-ones. I hate taking up people's too much time in their day, and there's so much now of, we're gonna have a one-on-one, then we're gonna have a team meeting, then we're gonna do something else. I mean, those are important, but building in like the show, and maybe not as a one-on-one or a team meeting, but a show and tell. Like, hey, marketing, like you just onboarded this really cool tech that is taking that ICP and persona work that my team helped you build out, and you're putting it to the test. And guess what? We're dealing with customer success at the same time. Let's bring them in to say, hey, like, did you really think about these are the churn triggers we're understanding? And so those rituals being not so much like the standard one-on-one, but maybe the show and tell. Here's the product. This is what we're working on. Can we learn from each other? Importantly, can you help me address the things that I am not seeing? So going into those conversations ready to ask the hard questions of the participants there, to ask of you. Like, you're asking the hard question of yourself up front. And I think that's an important part of that ritual sort of landscape. Light rituals versus hard rituals, et cetera. That's how I sort of approach or have been, and I try to approach. And that's the other thing, be self-critical. Like, I'm not always the best at it, and so I need people to keep me honest as well. So, and that's what I try to encourage.
Yeah, I definitely lean into more of the harder rituals. That's kind of my default. But just bringing everything to the surface. So the opposite of a premortem is a postmortem, and that has been a ritual that has literally saved us, time and time again. Sometimes I have to have multiple cohorts of postmortems because some folks may not feel empowered to say things in front of their boss's boss's boss. So I may have cohorts based on kind of general, levels and things, and bring it all together. And then one step further is even like I have a survey even for postmortems. If you can't make this meeting, that's okay. Just submit your feedback to me, and I will make sure that it is present, in the respective postmortems as well. And then crafting lesson learned repository. So I had one for RevOps that I eventually, in one of my roles expanded it for the whole company. It was just like, if you have things that you are learning that are points of failure that we need to learn from and not do it again, if we're going to launch another product, if we're going to, onboard, have another integration or something else that we're trying to do in a repeatable fashion, how can we make sure that we're not hitting these same hurdles again? And if we are, go back to the lessons learned. How did we recover last time? And so just really making that part of like your hard ritual before you kind of really get, knee deep in a new project or initiative, so that you don't kind of have it riddled with the same mistakes that we've seen. Because again, to our first point around building trust, that's how you do it. You don't repeat the same mistakes, especially as an operator.
Oh my goodness.
We try not to, for sure.
We
Right?
try not to, but we're human, but we try not to.
But and importantly, to that end, it helps us secure buy-in. So like, there's a willingness to provide those use cases, to share sort of that past lessons learned, or where we stumbled in the past, because there's that confidence that our input is valued, our insights are pertinent and meaningful, and we can also then start to see like what is the tangible output of the contributions that we're making. And I couldn't agree more. I think it's very well said. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's I mean, goodness gracious, I really appreciate the conversation, thus far. I think that it's just some concepts, some corollary concepts that are popping up for me come in the form of culture. And, I think that underlying culture of learning is so important, right? And then I think, corollary to that is, comes through this lens of experimentation and being willing and able to publish and share your lessons learned as an opportunity to avoid other team mistakes. And I think that that then it contextualizes the information, the qualitative and or quantitative data that perhaps becomes, organizational knowledge. And at what point does it then become institutional wisdom that become best practices, which is, such a communications concept in so many different ways. Now, I am sort of mindful, of at what point does wisdom sort of fall to the wayside based off of current events, best practices. It's very cyclical in so many different ways. And when you're then also competing with team members leaving, for example, and perhaps they weren't as good in terms of maintaining documentation, and there is a gap in knowledge that we then have to make some assumptions for, in so many different ways. But some of my favorite examples are of some of the tech giants that are out there, if I'm just being honest with you. I mean, Google is great about bringing in outside consultants and or experts that were former Googlers, for example, that have then launched their own organizations that were able to contextualize a time and place, what the organization was at some point that then provided that aha moment that encouraged them to, launch a business, or, they then saw a gap in the market. And so I suppose that then is sort of a natural segue to my next question for you all. And, I am mindful of time here, so I'm going to try to scoot us along. Um, and I think that this also alludes to, sorry if I'm, going all over the place, but, Matthew, you did, sort of communicate this process of team or cohorts or team members or pods bringing in new technologies into the technology stack, which maybe have broader ramifications for the other team in terms of the maintenance of data, right? And so I suppose my question for you all comes in the form of, what are your criteria for trusting a data source or a vendor or a new technology that then perhaps ultimately has ramifications for broader team cross align or team alignment?
So you're, let me just make sure I'm following this.
Please.
You're basically, how are we building trust in those potential vendors or partners that we're looking at?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I mean, a great question, and I mean, it's one that we always grapple with. But do we have confidence in their data? If we're looking at it, well, I'm going to take a quick step back, because there's also the conversation is, do we want a third party vendor, or can we do it ourselves? There's always sort of that conversation initially. And I have a couple different sort of mechanisms by which I measured it. If it's speed is the issue, yeah, third parties often win out for sure. I mean, if we need like a large scale data set that will help us with build a lead generation exercise, et cetera, or if we need improved account hierarchical structure information, yeah, and in short order, no doubt, I think third party wins out. If it's something that we're talking about scalability, and we have that expertise internally, or Ariel, this is maybe also to your ends. Is it worth us, more importantly, going and finding that expertise and bringing that in, or cultivating the knowledge that we have, because we're looking at longer term solutions? So the AI transition, right? And everybody's sort of discussed it. With one of the firms I worked with, there was a need to model, ARR forecasting, and could it be done, at a more precise level, or with more accuracy, if we did our own model building? Well, yes, that was the decision, and longer term, that's probably where we're going. So we made that decision to cultivate our internal knowledge, and also go find like the skills that we didn't have in terms of a person. So I guess to circle back, Terrence, to your initial question, one, I would say the first thing I'm doing is looking at, is this a buy versus build sort of situation? And then if it is a buy, how am I evaluating that data? Do I have confidence in the information they're having? Where is the data coming from? If it's a black box, I mean, like, look, I can create my own black box. I don't need, like, I need some ability to create some certainty. And can I do that? When I get the data, is it showing up? Is it being integrated in those platforms existing? And they're being read and interpreted in the same way. Maybe not interpreted, but is my finance user and my sales user looking at the same data and seeing the same thing? Does it hold up across systems? I think that's a big part of it. And then ultimately, how easy is it to teach or enable those users over time? And area, I think on a multiple number of fronts, you'll eloquently be able to elaborate and maybe put into better words than I'm thinking right now. But effectively, that enablement piece is the last part of it. Like how difficult is it going to be for me to get this internalized? How am I going to get these users to take it? Because in a consultative capacity, I certainly don't want to walk away from a client and have them just say, oh, well, we just, screwed the pooch on this one, and we're not going to deal with like this technology ever again. No. That's not the goal. And so I think there's that the transparency side, the accountability side, and the enablement side, I think, and the user adoption side is how I certainly go about interrogating those if we decide to buy those third party inputs.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. There is a build versus buy, and you have to think of your internal teams, all the projects that they're already on. Do they even have the capacity to dedicate, specific time to build something internally versus buy it? In my former capacities, I would do a lot more vendor selection because we were in more of the latter, which we're just going to buy something that's going to help us solve our problems because we don't necessarily have the internal capacity to sift through all of the if-then statements or scenarios. We just need someone that can help guide us along. And so in that vendor selection component of it, I have to think of what is the problem we are trying to solve. Okay, looking at it from a lens of how does finance view this problem? How does sales? How is anyone who's going to interact with this potential buy solution? How do they interpret the problem we're solving? Will they actually use this if we buy it and set it up and enable it? But I did want to think about, like, as far as vendor selection, thinking of what your criteria is. Like, is this going to help speed things up? Is it going to simplify my tech stack? Then I think of the enablement piece of it based on tech that the teams have already been introduced to. And I think that comes with a little bit of wisdom, having been at the company for a little while, hearing those hemming and hawing about, this feature or that feature, really having dedicated Slack channels where they can share, what their grievances, if you will, and be able to kind of figure out, like, okay, well, what are we really trying to solve? How do I dig in? How do I investigate to make sure that this, vendor selection works for us? And then really taking the time to say, all right, is this tool solution really checking all of my boxes? I think sometimes what happens, we start with the problem, we have all these qualifications, and then things kind of go off the rail and it turns into something that we didn't really anticipate. And so it's like really staying focused on the problem and then the scope of how we want to solution that through the vendor selection, and ultimately adding it to the tech stack, enabling our teams, and having it scale with the business and the team over time.
Yeah,
that sustainability piece, absolutely. I mean, and all of that wraps back. And I'm sorry, Terrence. I mean, you struck a nerve with me as well, because this circles back to that building trust and buy-in, all of these processes. So, yeah, well said. And that sustainability issue is certainly paramount. I mean, through and through, the RevOps function and role is, whatever path we take and whatever thing we do, can it be governed and maintained, and is it going to get us to that next of not only just solving the problem, but the unknown problems that are coming down the road?
Yeah.
Are we prepared for it?
I would routinely invite subsets of folks to, like, as we are building this solution, or we purchased it, we're still trying to figure out how to set it up, invite people to literally come in and break it.
Yeah.
RevOps, we try our best to break it, but we have so many people that think differently, and like it has been amazing to see how people's brains work. And when I say go in and break it, oh, it's fun for them. It's fun. And then we get that feedback. We kind of uncover the things that we need to know before we roll it out. And then they also have that buy-in piece too. Like, hey, this is going to be super cool. Like, they're going to go, tell their colleagues, like, I can't wait till this is ready to go, and then they start really pushing, like, can we push up the go live date? Like, oh goodness, now I've created monsters in a good way. But that's the exciting part of RevOps, especially when it comes to tooling. And now, like you kind of alluded to it, Terrence, with this wave of AI and how things will be different, and having more like real-time data, and being able to forecast, not with things from a year ago, but based on where we are today, like being able to use AI to do that, being able to use machine learning to understand our patterns, to do things even better, faster, efficiently, and to beat out our competition.
I love that word patterns. And goodness, what I was thinking while you both were talking is we got to have a master class at some point, and I can't wait for you all to just perhaps teach members of the RevOps Masters community and share some of what your learnings are. If I'm, even going back to my own process for, tools, certainly that process of an ongoing audit in so many ways comes in the form of subscribing to product level emails from the technologies that I use and reading those emails to understand feature updates and how that could potentially be impacting my workflow, right? And then the level beneath that comes in the form of going to webinars like this one, where they are communicating a new release, which perhaps has multiple features that I need to be aware of. And that then comes in the form of being able to going into one of those Slack channels, Ariel, that you were describing, and sharing my notes from the conversation, or sharing my excuse me, a recording, and synthesizing information for the team to understand how that potentially is going to be impacting them over the next 30, 60, 90 days, for example. And really, sort of understanding the tools. You guys have heard me both use this phrase before, your tools and rules, right? But really understanding the maintenance of said tools, right, and the rules of the road based off the dynamic nature of software and how it changes with time, behooves all of us before we decide to make that choice to either buy something else or build something completely new, right? And I think, that next level of assessment, in my opinion, I mean, just some broad things that I like to do are create requirements documents, right? A quick requirements document helps me to sort of understand, hey, is this something that I can find an out of the box solution for, right? Or is this something that perhaps is custom that we can maybe go to Fiverr or hire a contractor to build out quickly? Does an internal team member have the capacity under skill set to develop this, right? Or, full circle, is this something on one of the technology's roadmaps, right, that is going to be here sooner rather than later? So let's have a Band-Aid solution for now, you know what I mean? And understand that the problem that we're predicting is going to be solved sooner rather than later. And let's move on to, something else in the interim. Um, which, oh my goodness, I love the way that you all are able to bring some of this stuff out of me. Mindful of time, I know we've only got about 11 minutes here, so let's maybe get through two really powerful questions. Um, I suppose, and I think we've all sort of communicated this already, but, I would love maybe a little bit more of a concrete answer related to how we approach documentation and knowledge transfer internally in order to reduce some of that operational friction that Matthew described earlier. And Ariel, ladies first this time, please.
Yeah. So my brain immediately went to the RACI model. That's kind of been one of my saviors. as an operator is just really understanding where's our swim lane. So I understand what my position is with this project, this initiative, this solutioning, so that we're not stumbling over each other. We're not doing, rework eventually. I'm trying to make sure that there's clarity. And a big part of my role has been, like roles prior, has been to communicate these things up to leadership and then back down to teams and then cross-functionally as well. So I can say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And I would do it as a one pager once we kind of gather all of the information, but it would be a one pager that I would send out and say, this is the person that you need to go to around this initiative. They are the lead. Respect them and what they're trying to do. Don't try to circumvent them and come to me and think I'm going to solve all your problems. But if something's not working, obviously, yes, come to me. But RACI model, so we know who's responsible, who's accountable, who's supporting, who's consulting, who just needs to be informed. And quite frankly, because there's a lot of people that have interest and they want to be on that list. Honestly, between my team and leadership, if we feel that you're not quite making the bill for informed at least, or some other area of the RACI, that's okay. We're trying to preserve your time. It's not that we want to exclude everybody, but we have to have a very clear understanding of who's involved so that we can get the work done, we can get approvals, we can, understand the problems that we're solving, how we're going to do it, the timeline. So that one pager that I come up with that also shares the RACI model as well is really helpful for folks. And understanding like the milestones, because I did have that as well, the milestones that we're planning to achieve and before we get the end result. And so I can report back on those dates and the milestones and see how we're tracking. I love a good percentage. This is the percentage completion. So I would have that kind of check-in email, or really dependent upon, like with my executive leadership, how do you want to receive this information? Do you want me to quickly tell you? But generally speaking, a one pager, how we're doing, and as we are approaching each of the milestones, how we track into it. And then I also have the executive sponsor. So there's RACI and there's also executive sponsor. I don't want to be remiss to say that, because in some aspects with the initiatives that we're trying to push through, we definitely need an executive that will say, I am sponsoring
Yes.
this project, this initiative. We do need to go forward with this. This is how it's going to relate to our OKR or our KPIs. And this is what we're trying to do ultimately as a business as a result of this project or initiative.
Ariel, I'm gonna pass it over to you, Matthew, but I do, just for anyone that's watching this that may not be aware of the acronyms, can you tell us what a RACI is, what an OKR is, and what a KPI is?
Yes. So a RACI model, it's each letter of that acronym stands for just for our responsible is responsible. It should be one person. It can't have like three people responsible for the same thing. Accountable can be one or two. So they're also accountable to having this project or initiative be successful. Support just means who can I lean on? And just a couple people there, not too large. Then consulted is, if this, say I have an initiative that will drastically impact the customer success team, I would definitely want to consult some folks and have them listed on there to say, hey, you've been identified as the person that I can lean on to understand more about how this project, initiative, tool, et cetera, will impact you, your work, your team. So you're on that list. And then informed is like, you don't really have a responsible capacity. It's just, this is a need to know. You need to know that, this is coming down the line, communicate it to your teams cross-functionally as needed, but you're just aware. So that's RACI model. OKR is objectives, key results. So we have to break down the things that we do, we have to break it down a little bit. So what are our objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the key results of our actions? So are we expecting a potential ROI? Are we expecting, better productivity? And what does that mean to you and your team? And then KPI, our key performance indicators. So what do we need to see so that we know we're trending or tracking toward the right solution, the right path? So sorry about that.
Oh,
Long-winded, but wanted to definitely
that's
give those
spot on.
context.
Yeah, no, you did so well. Goodness, you're just so bright. So Matthew, going back to the question at hand.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, look, I love this. Let me compliment it from sort of the bottom up approach, because I think Ariel, you really hit it from like with the racy, et cetera, knowing your executive sponsors. I mean, whether it be like and then with maybe tech implementation, whether it be you're using an agile model or a safe model, et cetera. But let me take it from the bottom up approach, because I think that'll be a nice complement here. And and really it's where my mind goes on. I tend to get into the weeds, and so I want to make sure I understand. To that question, what is documentation, and how do we help how do we hope that it drives the reduction of friction? And for me, it's about sort of a knowledge transfer side. So do we have processes or playbooks? Are we building them as we go that are going to help, you know, practitioners take that next step? What do we have to do next? Is it easy to follow? With a CRM implementation, the sales team, I've always had trouble with them. Like, treat it as your source of truth. Well, they're like, well, yeah, but I get here and I get stuck and I don't know what to do next. And so, do I have I built a playbook that's easy for them to sort of self-serve the learning, or have I embedded documentation in their processes, help text or bubbles that pop up like, hey, I need these actions, etc. But you know, tooltips directly inside the platform is another big one, and then sort of live knowledge transfers. You when I'm doing anything, whether it be a sales process or a functional mapping of A to Z or top of funnel to sale close. What is the marketing team's function? How are they interacting with the website or their nurturing engines? How is sales collecting that handoff from leads? Do we have a recording of that whole process for which people then can go back to and say, hey, this is it? And Ariel, again, to your point, do we have, is someone like me in the weeds, in the sense, am I working to understand where's that knowledge repository where everybody knows to go? Do I also need to show them where do they go? And it's fine. I love people coming to me with questions, but it's a self-serve situation. I think that documentation is really helping, reduce that friction, and that's where I guess I'm trying to go. So bottom up, those are some of the approaches, and at least things that I'm thinking about. It's not about binders. It's not about like huge decks, etc. But what is accessible, what is manageable, and what's going to provide those answers? Is my learner, do they like audio? Do they need visual? Do they like? I love videos because I can go back through, pause the stop. Okay, do I understand? Take my screenshot, etc. Whatever. Or you have people that I'm going to dive in, dig in. Like, okay, great. I embrace your fearlessness, but what if you get stuck? How easy is it for you to get unstuck? And have I made that, done that? And have I done my job effectively from a RevOps perspective, tech perspective, to allow you to be fearless and to get stuck and then unstick yourself? But hopefully that's a nice. Hopefully that's a compliment.
Yeah, well said. And I suppose this is a good way for us to just sort of button things up. Just, we are at time, and I want to respect both of y'all's time. But, me personally, I could listen to you both for probably like another hour and a half. I mean, this has been so much fun for me, and I feel so seen, through this lens of, serving as a project leader with other revenue operations and sales enablement professionals, mindful of some of the challenges and, that I have to deal and compete with, and the deep level of empathy and understanding that you are all offering. I mean, I definitely am taking notes that I can then go back and share with my team, right, through this lens of information and knowledge management. But my hope is that anybody that's watching the replay or catching any of the clips, across LinkedIn and or YouTube, you are all as interested in inviting Ariel and Matthew back to a conversation as I am, just because it's been so exciting. So on that note, I would love to perhaps have you all close with either a finishing thought, or just what you're working on, how people can get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you. But this floor is yours. But yeah, the last few minutes are yours to share any important updates on your side or any closing thoughts, and we'll go ahead and wrap up today's session.
Yeah, Matt, would you like to start?
Well, yeah. Let me just quickly. Yeah, thank you, Terrence, Ariel. It's been a pleasure and an honor for me as well. And I appreciate it. I'd love to keep the conversation going. In these sessions, offline, etc. And for me, it's these things are wonderful because it's about cross team accountability. How are we sharing those ideas? How do we learn from each other? I mean, it's not just building dashboards. But it's fostering sort of joint problem solving, and this type of conversation is just that. I mean, again, I mentioned this looking around corners. I've seen around tons of corners today, so thank you. And impact shows up not just in metrics, but in that culture and execution and speed. And so it's exciting. But yeah, I'd love to chat more as well. Ariel with you, Terrence with you, but to the community, find me at vistaraadvisory.com. And I'm always eager to exchange ideas, problem solve, or just chat about the next best thing that we haven't yet seen. So I'm always up for that conversation.
Great. I just wanted to wrap up by saying, like, I completely enjoyed our conversation today. I will definitely be talking to both of you offline and looking forward to hopefully like a part two or something real soon. But yeah, you can find me at infinitelyelevated.com. I have a YouTube channel as well where I share insights, tips, best practices. There's some things on LinkedIn as well with my LinkedIn newsletter, so folks can learn. I try to keep them really short but actionable. But yeah, if you need help with your career, you can book a career strategy session. If you have more of an organizational need, we should probably have a deeper dive conversation before we jump into anything specific. But happy to help. I love RevOps, and I hope you all do too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to Ariel and Matthew for being here today. As a reminder, my name is Terrence Latimer. I am the community manager for RevOps Masters, our LinkedIn community. I also serve as project guide at Atomic Revenue, where I work with clients of all sizes in order to meet and exceed their revenue operations and sales enablement needs through this lens of identifying opportunities for successful outcomes. Atomic Revenue actually just hit our 10-year anniversary as an organization, which is super exciting. I just hit my 3-year anniversary with the firm, which I'm super excited about as well. We have so many more fun and exciting news coming up in the pipeline, including our new product, our RevOps Reality Check, excuse me, which is a new process for helping firms understand where they're perhaps seeing some friction in their RevOps strategy, right? And so I'll be sure to drop a link in the description across all platforms for this video. So if you are interested in taking a brief RevOps reality check in order to understand where you are, please feel free to do so. But until then, be on the lookout for the next conversation with Matthew and Ariel. This is very exciting, and I thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. Thank you, Matthew.
You too, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.